notes for tonight is multiplying integers. So when you look at your multiplying integers notes sheet, you are going to see these I do, you do boxes, which we did a little bit of last time with the addition and subtraction of integers. When we're multiplying, it's totally different rules than adding and subtracting. So adding and subtracting, we had to see how many negatives we had and how many positives we had. Did we have more of one or the other? On multiplying and dividing, it's a totally different rule. And those rules are on your yellow integer sheets that I handed out to you. So when we're multiplying and dividing, two positives will make a positive and two negatives will make a positive. But if you have mixed signs, one of each, then you're going to get a negative result. So on this example right here, 3 times 2, we all know from grade school, you know that 3 times 2 is 3 groups of 2. So in this case, we're dealing with only positives. It's 3 groups of positive 2. So we draw, our description is 3 groups of positive 2, and we just draw a picture of 6 positives. The value of that then is 6. And so for 4 times 2, it would be 4 groups of positive 2. And you would be able to just write in that box 4 groups of positive 2. I'm just going to use shorthand here because I don't have a lot of room. My picture is going to have 4 groups of 2, and they're all positive. And my answer for this, the value is 8. Okay, now we're going to throw in some negative numbers. The multiply still means of. So in the I do part up here, we have 3 groups of negative 2. So you would draw in your 3 groups of negative 2 for a total value of negative 6. For the you do part, you're going to have 4 groups of negative 2. So you would draw your 4 groups of negative, oops, this one goes over here. 4 groups of negative 2, and your answer would be negative 8. So a positive 4 groups of 2 negatives will make negative 8 for the answer. So you have a positive times a negative is a negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. That's one of your rules. Okay, so we need to remember that multiplication is the same as adding over and over again. So 4 times negative 2 means we take negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2. And when we model that on a number line, it looks like this. You have your 4 jumps of negative 2 each. So now if you're going to model 7 times negative 1 on the number line, what will it look like? So I want you to go ahead and model that on your own. What will 7 times negative 1 look like if 4 times negative 2 looks like this? All right. So we're going to try a few without a number line or drawing out counters. And I'll do 1 and 3 with you. You can do 2 and 4. Looking at your integer rules, you can use those. 5 times a negative 7, that'd be 5 groups of negative 7. So 5 times 7 is 35. Since I have a positive and a negative, that means my answer will be negative 35. For number 3, 6 groups of 8. That's the same multiplication you've done since grade school. 6 times 8 is 48. 2 positives make a positive. Go ahead and do 2 and 4 on your own. Okay, going one step further, let's look at these expressions. We're going to draw the picture model and then give the value. I'm going to do the second and third one with you. The first one is 3 times 3. So you need to draw your 3 groups of 3 and tell me what 3 times 3 is. Now the second one is 3 groups of negative 3. So I would draw 3 groups of negative 3. There's 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups. And when I count those up, I have 9 negative counters there, so my value should be negative 9. On the next one, when I have negative 2 groups of 2, we have to remember that the minus sign also means, or the negative sign also means opposite of. So first we're going to draw out our 2 groups of 2. We'll do 2 groups of 2. And since the first one means the opposite of, this negative 2 means the opposite of 2 groups of 2, we're going to flip this over and put equals with our 2 groups of negative 2. So this negative sign in front means that we'll change from 2 groups of 2 to 2 groups of negative 2. And the answer to that then is negative 4. I want you to do the 3 times negative 2 on your own. And down here on the bottom, we'll be doing the opposite of 2 groups of negative 2. Okay, so if there's got the negative sign out front, it's the opposite of 2 groups of negative 2. So first we would draw our 2 groups of negative 2. Put an equal sign there, draw the opposite of that, and tell me what the value is. Okay, so a few without the counters. Negative 5 times 7. You can do that one on your own, and also do 11 times negative 11. We've been working with that. When we get down to number 3, you're going to do one set at a time. So first I'll do negative 6 times negative 2. Now if you look at your integer rules, a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 6 times negative 2 is going to be positive 12. And then I'll bring down this times 4. So the answer for this one will be 48. I want you to use that same rule, breaking up into one multiplication problem and then adding the other multiplication problem. Do that for number 4 also. So I want you to write in here, looking at your rules chart if you need to, what rules do we have for integer multiplication? So what I'm looking for here is you can put symbols in here, you can put plus and minus and what the answer will be, whether it'll be positive or negative. Okay? So for example, I know from grade school that a positive times a positive is a positive. And you can write the words in there also. Okay, the next couple of questions on this notes sheet, you're to find 2 numbers that will satisfy both equations. Okay, satisfy both equations. That means that 2 numbers that if I plug them both into the square and the circle, they'll come up the same. So for example, if I have 2 times 4, that will equal 8. And 2 plus 4 will equal 6. So these would be my squares. They're both 2's. So you have to have the same number in both squares and the same number in both circles. Okay? 2 times 4 is 8 and 2 plus 4 is 6. So what numbers are you going to put in here to make the first one times the second one is negative 15 and the first one plus the second one is positive 2? One of these numbers is going to be negative. So if you choose to put, and what you can do is factor out 15, you're going to have the 2 numbers that multiply, or 4 numbers that you can use to multiply and get 15. Okay, so it's either going to be a 1 and a 15 or a 3 and a 5 in here. And something's got to be negative because when this gets multiplied, the answer is negative. Figure that out. You're going to have the same number in each square and circle. So if I put 1 and 15 in these, and say I make it a negative 15, they're both negative 15. Okay, 1 times negative 15 is negative 15, but 1 plus negative 15 is not 2. So these numbers don't work. I'm going to have to figure out something else to get my negative 15 and my 2. That's how you're going to solve that question, plus the next one after it. There's a couple more. Okay. see how many of those there are. Maybe I'll do that first one with you. You got 3 of them. I'll do the first one with you, and you can do the second 2 on your own. So my other combination that I could do is 3 and 5. So I'm going to put my 3 and my 5 in here in both of these. Starting out positive, but I know that 3 times 5 is positive 15. So one of these has to be negative, but I'm going to go down here to this addition equation to figure out which one that is. So if I made it negative 5, then 3 plus negative 5 would be a negative 2. But if I make it negative 3, then negative 3 and positive 5 makes positive 2. So I know that this combination has to be negative 3 times 5 is negative 15, and negative 3 plus 5 is positive 2. So that's how you would solve the first one. Okay? Filling in the following chart. You have x, you have your process, and you have negative 5 times x. When you have the number and the letter right next to each other, it means multiply. So in this one, x is worth negative 8. So we'd take negative 5 times negative 8 and get 40. In the next set, x is worth negative 5. So this is negative 5 times negative 5 equals 25. Okay, so in your process, you can write negative 5 all the way down here because it's always going to be negative 5 times the x value. Then your second number will be your x value, and you'll write your answer over here in the last. There's one more thing that I want to show you. It's kind of a little cheat for knowing whether a multiplied or divided number is positive or negative. That's a little triangle. Okay? I'm going to put a plus sign at the top of my triangle and 2 negative signs at the bottom. Now, if I have 5 times negative 2, my answer is negative 10, and I can check that because I have one positive number and one negative number, which means the only thing left over is a negative. Okay? And you can kind of use your finger to cover up which signs you've used. But if I have negative 5 times negative 2, I'm going to scratch out both those negatives, and my answer is going to be positive. So that's a positive 10 for that one. So that's a little thing that you can write on your paper and use to figure out what's going to be positive and what's going to be negative. There's no secret question.